Your family story might be a lie. Welcome to episode 7 of the Formidable Genealogist Studio, where I talk you through some more lengthy genealogy subjects compared with what I typically do with my daily short reels across social media that are just a general tip. Today, we are going to talk about family legends, those family stories that have been passed down that everyone believes are 100% true without actually being able to verify them through records. We're going to talk through what you can do. The story like that exists in my family is my McFarlane ancestors. I had always been told that they came over from Northern Ireland specifically to fight the British in the Revolutionary War. But once I started researching my family, I discovered that although they were very scrappy, that is not the only reason they came to America. And they were here as early as 1761 in Philadelphia. So that was not the impetus for their arrival here in America. They did fight in the Revolutionary War, though, so that part was true. There was a kernel of truth in this story, as there will be in most stories, even if you can prove a lot of it to be incorrect. So here is what I recommend you do. Any family story that you have in your line, I recommend you start by writing it down word for word how you remember it. Then I want you to talk to other family members, and especially the older family members, and have them recount it exactly as they remember it as well. Because these stories are like a game of telephone. Little bits get changed as they get passed down. One person remembers it one way, another person remembers it another way. But ask these people what their source was, especially for the key details that are provable, like names, dates, and locations, and like a historical event or whatever. So write down these bits of information. Talk to as many people as you can in your family. See how things vary for, the main meat of the story. And then I want you to create a timeline for it. Look at the timeline, including location and people involved and the dates. And then I want you to figure out what you can work on to prove this. If you have to break it down into smaller pieces, you can do that too. But I want to show you where I recommend you go first to try to figure out which records will exist for proving this. And that is the FamilySearch Wiki. So you got to familysearch.org, go to search, and you would go to Research Wiki. Once you're in here, let's say that what I'm researching happened in Northfield, Minnesota. So I'm going to put down Northfield, Minnesota in here and see if anything comes up. It doesn't. But Northfield is part of, I think it's Rice County, Minnesota. So I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to open that up. So here is the page for the county. If the one doesn't exist for the town, look for the county. And it's going to tell you the resources that exist so you can kind of determine if there should be records to prove or disprove your family story. So we've got, the county courthouse, and then it's going to give you those start dates for major records. It would also tell you if there was record loss in that county. So keep all of this in mind in the framework of that family story that you are trying to prove or disprove. Look through all the different options that exist out here, especially like newspapers, because that could be a way to solve somebody tied into a historic event. It would be newsworthy. That might help you isolate the information. Look at all of these different options, then make a list of what your research plan is going to be to prove or disprove this. I also want you to keep in mind the quality of the resources you are finding. Are they primary sources, meaning they were recorded at the time of the event, or are they secondary sources, meaning that this is somebody's recollection of something that happened much earlier? Because you have to give that a lot less credibility than you do the primary source records. Look at the facts and see if the timeline makes sense. I had a client case where she had been looking for newspaper articles about her, I don't remember if it was like great great grandmother that was killed in an automobile accident. And so I said, okay, what's the death date on it? And she said like 1879. I'm like, nope, that's not going to be an automobile accident. Make sure things line up. Another person hired me because they wanted to find out about their some ancestor that was really prominent in the Civil War. And then once I started looking at it, I was like, I can't work on this for you. This person died in 1859. They're not going to be part of the Civil War. So make sure things line up for time, place, historical events. See if you can poke holes in it as you get started. Um, a really common story that is in many families, which you've heard me talk about at length if you followed me at all on platforms, is the Ellis Island name change myth. Now, that one's kind of a really interesting subject because people have these stories that have been passed down about how they came through Ellis Island and the person working there said, we're not going to call you Orjahowski anymore. Your name is now Orson or Olson or something like that. And these families absolutely believe this because it's been passed down for a few generations, but that is false. And the way you would go about proving this one as an example is you would go out and you would find the naturalization documents, you would find the earliest records for when the person came into the country, like the first census that they show up on. A lot of immigrants, their first census may be their pre-change name before they assimilated and tried to fit into a more pronounceable or American name. So the naturalization documents might state, I entered the country under this name, and now this is the name I want to use going forward. Or you can go straight to those immigration documents and look for people that are coming by, their original name. And you can see that their departure name matches their arrival name. No names were changed at Ellis Island because they had those departure lists from their port of departure, and then they compared them at Ellis Island. So, in addition to people speaking many languages at Ellis Island and having interpreters readily available, so that there was not a language barrier, then on top of that, those records would prove to you that your ancestor changed their name on their own. So a lot of people just blindly believe any family story that they have, but I'm counting on you as good researchers to actually attack these family stories from every angle and get down to the kernel of truth that is hiding in there, because there typically is something in there. So I'd love to hear in the comments what some of your family legends are. I have a whole bunch in my family history, and I've been able to disprove most of them. Yeah, I'm kind of a pill that way, but I would love to hear some of yours.